Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us therefore lay aside every weight, every sin that so easily entangles us, that clings closely to us, and run the race set out for us to run, looking to Jesus, the author, the finisher of our faith, who for the joy set before him endured the cross, despising its shame, now seated at the right hand of the Father. I've talked about the Hebrides revival in the west coast of Scotland. Um, I find that a lot of my heroes seem to come out of Scotland for some reason. I'm not sure why. But have you heard of the New Hebrides? The New Hebrides in the South Pacific. These were islands. Maybe if you've watched the TV show Survivor, you've heard of them because there was another. Their name was changed to Vanuatu, Vanuatu, and that was once the New Hebrides. Well, I find that the people who inspire me the most are those who, despite hardships and difficult times, they just persevered. They continued to run their race. They continued to love people, to preach to people, to carry on doing what God had called them to do, even though their life was trouble. I heard about a guy years ago, and yes, still connected to Scotland. His name was John G. Paton. He changed history on those islands when he went there. His life and his work in the New Hebrides was difficult. It was often very dangerous. He preached and raised a family, and he worked to raise support in Scotland for missionary work. He also campaigned hard to persuade Britain to annex the Hebrides, the New Hebrides. He was a man's man. He was robust character, personality. He was also an author, and he was able to write down his story in print, and he actually developed a print shop. He's held up as an example, even an inspiration to many missionaries today. He was born on the 24th of May in 1824 in a little farm cottage in Braehead, Scotland. He was the eldest of 11 children of James and Janet Paton. They raised 5 sons, 6 daughters in a 3-room thatched cottage in Braehead. That's inspiring. But John, from the age of 12, he began to learn his father's trade. It was in manufacturing, and he would work for 14 hours a day. But he also found time to do his studies, which he was allotted 2 hours a day for the eating of his meals, and that's when he would study. And he was a very smart man. And during these years, he grew more and more to feel he was called by God to mission work. He was really, really influenced by the devout faith of his father. He just watched his father live out his faith, and they had a great relationship. And eventually, John moved to Glasgow, which was like 40 miles walking till Kilmarnock, and then I've been there. And then he would take a train to Glasgow. And when he undertook some theological training, but also medical training. And for some years, he also worked distributing tracts and teaching at school and laboring as a city missionary in the poor parts of Glasgow. So he was also ordained by the Reformed Presbyterian Church in 1858. He married a lady on the day before my birthday, back in 1858, a lady by the name of Mary Ann Robson. And they married April 2nd, and 2 weeks later sailed off for the New Hebrides. Now, that wasn't like a week-long journey or something. That was like months journey to get there. That alone was sacrificial. You know, he wrote about his parting from his dad. Like, those days you leaving as a missionary, you may never come home again. And he wrote about how much he loved his dad, and just that parting of the ways there. I wanted to read it to you. It's a little longer than usual that I would do, but I wanted to read it to you. It says this, and I'll just put it up here so I can read it. Following excerpt written by John G. Paton late in his life from his work called Missionary Patriarch, the true story of John G. Paton. And it provides this example of a relationship with his father. He goes, "My dear father walked with me the first 6 miles of the way. His counsel and tears and heavenly conversation on that parting journey are fresh in my heart as if it had been but yesterday. And tears are on my cheeks as freely now as then, whenever memory steals me away to the scene. His tears fell fast when our eyes met each other in looks for which all speech was vain. He grasped my hand firmly for a moment of silence and then solemnly said, 'God bless you, my son. Your father's God prosper you and keep you from all evil.' Unable to say more, his lips kept moving in silent prayer, and in tears we embraced and parted, and I ran off as fast as I could, and when about to turn a corner in the road where he would lose sight of me, I looked back, and I saw him standing with head uncovered. Probably it was raining in Scotland. Head uncovered where I had left him, gazing after me, waving my hat in adieu. I was round the corner and out of sight in an instant, but my heart was too full and sore to carry me further, so I darted to the side of the road and wept for a time. Rising up cautiously, I climbed the dike to see if he yet stood where I had left him, and just at that moment I caught a glimpse of him climbing the dike as well and looking out for me. He did not see me, and after he had gazed eagerly in my direction for a while, he got down, set his face toward home, and began to return, his head still uncovered, and his heart, I felt sure, still rising in prayer for me. I watched through blinding tears till his form faded from my gaze, and then, hastening on my way, vowed deeply and often the help of God to live and act so as to never grieve or dishonor such a father and such a mother as he had given me. The appearance of my father when we parted has often through life risen vividly before my mind, and does so now, as if it had been but an hour ago. In my earlier years, particularly when exposed to many temptations, his parting form rose before me as that of a guardian angel. It is no Phariseeism, but deep gratitude which makes me here testify that the memory of that scene not only helped to keep me pure from the prevailing sins, but also stimulated me in my studies, that I might not fall short of his hopes in all my Christian duties, that I might faithfully follow his shining example." Wow, what a testimony. So they landed on Vanuatu, or the New Hebrides, in this island called Tanna. It was full of cannibals. They were met by a Canadian missionary, actually, named John Getty, and he had been working for 12 years on an island, in the islands of the New Hebrides, but not the same island. In those days, yeah, full of cannibals. These guys, according to Mr. Paton, he said they were painted savages who enveloped all the superstitions and cruelties of heathenism at its worst. Men and children went about in a state of nudity, while the woman wore abbreviated grass or leaf aprons. 3 months after their arrival, a son Peter was born in February 1859, but just 19 days later, his wife Mary died from a tropical fever. And he carries on. Soon his son, newly born Peter, died at 36 days of age. John buried his wife and his son nearby each other, and by their house spent nights guarding their graves from the cannibals. He risked his life. There was many attacks on his life. During one attack, he was rescued by a ship that was passing by, took him away for some time. But he kept coming back. He had a love for these people. He came to where they came back. I just want to catch my place again here where I was thinking. He came back to the New Hebrides with a new wife later on, Maggie. They went to an adjacent island, one island called Aniwa, and they built a little home. They actually raised many children, 10 children, 4 of whom would die in early childhood. but they stayed the course. Their fourth son, Frank, ended up continuing on the work, being a missionary there in the New Hebrides. He was one who was born on Aniwa Island. John put the language, he learned it well, he put it into printing form. They taught classes. His wife Maggie taught to about 50 women. They taught him how to do like a micro business, planting plating hats and weaving hats and things and selling. They trained the teachers. They trained indigenous people to go to the other islands and bring the gospel. They shared with us. After their many years of many painful sufferings and just the things that they stuck it out, the whole entire island of Aniwa proclaimed Christianity. In 1899, he saw an Aniwa New Testament printed at his shop, and they saw the establishment of many missionaries, 25 of the 30 islands of the New Hebrides. The gospel was reaching. He and Mary and Maggie, they're part of the great crowd of witnesses that cheer us on in the race that we're to run. They're saying to us, keep going. You don't know how far you've come. Through trial, through temptation, keep on running. Keep on running. Just keep running your race.